Hey everybody, Andy here. Got a great one today on interviewing, how to ace any job interview. We're in day 3 of my 3-day interviewing workshop. So get in the chat, say hi. I want to tell you what today's all about. Just a real quick intro. We got a lot to cover today. But if you are just joining us or just jumping in, day 1 was how to introduce yourself. That was a wonderful way to construct a 1-minute intro. So when you get into an interview, you can appropriately introduce the high points, the things that matter about you, and you can do it in a tight form. And then yesterday, day 2, we came back with story selection. So how do you choose the right stories? I talked a little bit about what stories are generally good to have. I'm going to recap that in a minute here. And then also how to decide what kind of criteria to use. Is it better to go with something that's more relevant or something that's more recent? I walked through a bunch of criteria, half a dozen or 7 points there as well. If you missed those, check them out. But even if you haven't seen them, it's okay. You're going to get a whole lot out of today. It's not like you actually have to watch all these in order, although it's nice. But today's going to be, today's in a number of sections, so to speak. I'm going to recap the stories that I want you to be ready for. I'm going to talk with you ever so briefly about the different ways that employers format their interview questions. I'm also going to walk you through 11 different groupings of question types and how I would consider them. What is it that I want you to know about the questions and how to approach answering it? And in that part of the talk, there are a lot of additional assets that I have on my YouTube channel or in my job search coaching program that you can use to kind of fill in any areas that you might want to dig deeper on. Today's going to be a wonderful curation of a lot of the material that I have, and virtually all of it is free. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about a really good technique and a way to construct virtually any interview response. And then I'm going to walk you through a case study of one of my members of my job search coaching program. She's a boot camper. I recently had a one-on-one session with her, and I just thought her story, her prep, what she was looking for, how she needed to improve, and what I ultimately taught her to do was really something great to share with you. So that's what today's all about. If you've been enjoying this week, and you've been getting a lot of value out of it, make sure to share this information. This is going to live on my YouTube channel. I do not intend on taking this 3-day workshop down, so you come back and visit it, the teaching portions and the Q&A, and make sure to send a signal to YouTube that you're enjoying it by clicking the like button, and be subscribed to the channel, because you know it hurts me whenever you miss anything that I put out there on the internets. Okay, let's see. Everything looks good. And I wanna say a quick hello, because I know a lot of you have been with me and going the distance. And have you noticed who's number 1 on the call sheet here? Which is Mom is the first in the chat. Thanks, Mom. Love you. Great to see you. And I just I miss you terribly. I hope you're doing well. And Flavia. Oh, Flavia is now famous because we sat her on the first session on Tuesday, where we did the introduction hot seats. Thanks. Give her a shout out for that. Dave Coburn, Mike Tierney, Michael Moore, wonderful to have you. Truckerman, Medina, Kurt, Daryl, Jamie, Ann, M Sport, and everybody else. All right, let's dive in today. But while I get rolling here, can you go into the chat and let me know just in one little 200 character whatever, what your favorite part of the session these sessions have been so far. So what was your favorite moments in how to introduce yourself and how to select the right stories? And then, speaking of stories, I want to just recap very quickly. As a hirer, as an executive recruiter, as any hiring official, recruiter, whoever it is that you're speaking with at an organization, it's my opinion, based on loads of data, loads of experience, loads of interviews, placing more than 600 people at over 200 companies, not to mention coaching tens of thousands of you individually, that these are the 6 magical stories that you should have in the tank when you walk into any interview. So yes, there are questions like, tell me about yourself and why do you want to work here and all that. Those are all great. But when it comes to storytelling, make sure you can talk about your passion, your problem solving, the way that you provide value, what is your unique value, how you develop people, you don't need to be a manager to do that, how you serve people, how you serve customers or people, how you've handled a mistake. Now, I have a video out there about the 6 best stories to tell in a job interview. I break this down. I talk about each one. So that's the first order of business. So I just want to make sure for completeness of this talk that you recognize that those are out there. Now, earlier in the year, back in January, this is 2022, back in January, I put out a video on the 3 types of job interview questions, or the 3 formats of the job interview questions that employers ask and how to answer them. And I want to talk about those here too. Just to recap, there are behavioral interview questions, there are project-specific questions, and there are generally situational questions. And let me just tell you what these are, and then I'm going to give you a reference so that you can watch it, and then I want to look at the chat to see what some of the favorite moments were. Behavioral interviewing questions are generally questions about your past. The employer is trying to, as the name connotates, evaluate a behavior, because they think that past behaviors are predictors of future behaviors. I don't think anything could be further from the truth, but that's what they think. Those are the types of questions that they ask. And so it's things like, please tell me about a time when you organized something. Please tell me about a time when you disagreed with somebody. And they're looking for your behavior. So that's what a behavior question is. It's about the past. Project-specific question, this is kind of my nomenclature for it, but basically when an employer says to you, hey, Dan, I see this project on your resume. Can you walk me through how you did that? And now you're going to tell them exactly what the steps are that you took in order to implement that. They're picking something you did. It could be a task. It could be a project. It could be an initiative. It could be something that you had to go through in order to attain something, whatever it is, but they choose it. It's from your past, and they're asking you to tell them about it. That's a project-specific question. And then there's a situational question. This is a question about the future. This is a question like, hey, we've got this customer. She's been a real problem. How would you handle her? Hey, we want you to come in and build out the marketing team. How would you do that? They're basically presenting an example of a future situation. We have this problem in our environment. We've been struggling with it. What would you do? Any of those, they're putting you in a situation and they're asking you what you would do. These are basically the way the questions are asked in any type of question. It's going to be about your past or it's going to be about your future. So there's only 2 time zones, and they usually come in one of these 3 varieties. Any type of question they can ask. Now, I have a video on my YouTube channel as well on the 3 types of interview questions and how to answer them. So if you want more on this, check that out. Now what I'd like to do is I'd actually like to take a peek at what some of the favorite moments are. Kara's telling me people like structuring the stories, intros in less than a minute, seeing the process through the eyes of the recruiter. I love that too. I love sharing that part with you. And then Luz Morales, please listen to him. I watched a lot of his content and followed his advice. Now I have the work I dreamed of. And then the example, selecting stories, checking LinkedIn for clues about companies. That was a good one too. So all right, so that was Tuesday and Wednesday. So it's session 1 and session 2. But now what I want to do is I actually want to run through these very quickly. But there are 11 different buckets. So those are the formats: behavioral, project, and situational. But there's buckets of question types that generally fall in certain what I would call categories of questioning. I think there's 11, give or take. We can quibble about whether there's 10 or 12 or 15, but generally speaking, you're going to get questions that fall into these groupings. And what I want to do with these groupings is I want to give you ideas of how to think about what it is to say. All right, now the first one, I call these the out of the gators. But basically, some of the first questions you should get in an interview are, why are you open to leaving your current job? Why did you leave your current job? Why are you looking? Those kinds of things. Why do you want to come here? Why us? right? So why are you open to moving? Why did you choose us? Or why would you? What value can you bring? And how will you benefit? Now, these you got to have ready. Now, one of the things that I want to show you is we've been giving this away every single day. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time with the tactics. I just want you to be ready. These are standard operating procedure and should be asked in some format by every employer. They ask these, that's a good sign, right? They should want to know this, and you should be ready to do this. And if you haven't grabbed this yet, I have this booklet that we've been giving away for 6 years that I created, and I formatted my 14 favorite job interview questions. But what I did is I put the question up in the blue section. I showed you some alternate versions on the left. I taught you about what the employer was evaluating, and then I talked a little bit more about the philosophy, and then I gave you some sample responses. So you can see some of these out of the gators that I just talked about. If you grab this booklet is free, and so you can grab it. Stacy's pinned it in the chat. If you're interested in this, you can grab that free booklet because I've taken a chapter out of my interview intervention book. It's my silver bullet interview chapter where I identified the 14 most effective job interview questions that you can be asked. 43 variations of those questions, as you could saw the alternate versions, what the employer is evaluating, why they're asking it, and some of the best ways to approach it and example responses. Now, that's a chapter that I peeled out of my interview intervention book, and I'm giving that away for free. If you want the interview intervention book, the whole book, we have a book package where you can grab the hardcover. The $30 hardcover is $7. You get the $30 hardcover, you get the $9 ebook, you get the audiobook that's not even for sale, and you get a bunch of other bonuses with it too. So you could go that route if you want to chip in a few bucks. Maybe Stacy can drop, somebody's already dropped that. Actually, Stacy, could you drop the interview book offer, the free book offer for $7? Don't laugh at that expression, but basically I'm looking to recover some of the fees for the services, the envelopes, and wherever, but I'll send it to you anywhere you want in the world. But gotta know the out of the gators. Now, there's a couple of other out of the gators that employers love to ask you. I call them the lazy two, because it requires no thought on their part. They're turning over control of the interview to you. It isn't a great way for them to run an interview because it leaves you to your own devices to talk about whatever you want to talk about. And the goal of the interviewer is to get information that they need to ascertain in order to make a determination about whether you are a good fit for their company or not. If you're wandering all over the place when they ask you things like, tell me about yourself or walk me through your resume, the one thing that I want to say about these two types of questions that I want you to be ready for are, number one, a great place to start is on the first session of this free workshop where I talked about how to introduce yourself. I also have a video on each of these on my YouTube channel. Tell me about yourself, the best response for that, and walk me through your resume, the best response for that. You can go watch those if you'd like, but the one point I want to make about this is when you are walking them through you want to make sure you are emphasizing their gaps and their problems and how you would solve them. The fact that you have solved them, the fact that you can solve them, the fact that you love solving them, the fact that you wake up, you go to sleep at night thinking about their problems, you wake up thinking about those problems all day long, you solve those problems. That's the way you want to tell these stories. So I've given you the exact scripts for these two as well. Those are the early ones. Now, there's another one that I don't love, where they ask you to look into the future and they want you to play Nostradamus. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What's the first act you will perform when you get here? What will be your greatest accomplishment if you worked here? What would be your greatest accomplishment in 3 years? And they're asking you to project into the future. Now, the first act is about what you know about their problem and what's going to give them the greatest ROI immediately. That's what you want to concentrate on. So whatever their problems are that you notice, you'd say, I would dive right in and focus on this. When you look at the 5-year question, I've put a video out there, wouldn't you know, on my YouTube channel. And the thing that you want to stress in the 5-year question is about the trajectory that you will be on. Most people fall victim to this question because the question is designed with the where word in it. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Which implies that they're looking for an answer as a spot and a moment in time. And what you naturally want to do is you tend to want to focus at a moment in time in the future about what you'll be called or what you'll be doing specifically. I expect that I would be a senior system engineer by then. I would expect, so that's not the way to go about it. Big mistake. What you want to talk about is think about the trajectory and who you want to be in 5 years. In 5 years, I would imagine I would be somebody who's focusing on building large this, supporting you in that, and talk about what it is you'll be doing in relation to who it is you will be at that time, not what you will be called or what function you'll have. Talk in general capacities. I've got a whole video out on my YouTube channel about this. I even lay it out. I lay out a script for you too. So there's the Nostradamus questions. I want you to go into the future. You got to be ready with those. Then you've often got the conflicts, right? How would you handle a disagreement with a coworker? Well, tell me about a time when you satisfied a difficult teammate, a difficult customer, a demanding boss, or whatever. And in these situations, the inclination is for you to immediately start telling a story about how you influenced somebody to see your way. That's not what I want you to do. The first thing you want to stress here in these situations is you want to talk about your philosophy, and your philosophy is I'm open-minded. So whenever I have a disagreement with somebody, I'm ultimately wondering, maybe they're seeing something that I don't. Maybe they know something I don't. The only way for me to grow as an individual would be to listen to the views of others, learn from them, and then see what their viewpoint is and try to evaluate it from their vantage point. And then, so be open-minded. Then I would listen to what they had to say. Then my first inclination will be, why does it have to be either or? Is there a way as teammates we could make it better? Generally, when you disagree with a teammate, it's usually about an approach that you want to use to solve a goal. That happens in 90% of the cases, and that's where most disagreements occur. It's just like accidents that happen within 1 mile of the house. Most disagreements at work happen to be with coworkers about the approach that you want to take. So whenever that happens, I always look for, is there an and option instead of an or option? So there was this time when. So you want to make sure, especially when it's a negative question like this, that you're giving them your philosophy about what a well-adjusted human being you are. Okay? So the conflicts ones, that's number 4. And then number 5 is general, vague, random organization questions. Tell me about a time when you organized something. Tell me about a time when you brought order out of chaos. I hate these questions. They're silly. But no matter what you respond to, if you have to pull an example out of the sky, first order of business is you want to try to organize and show them you brought order from chaos to a problem that is related to what they do. But no matter who you are, no matter what level you are, if you get a question like this, and even if you don't get a question like this, so the junior people are going to get vague questions that say, tell me about a time you organized something. The senior people aren't going to get a question like that. They're going to get a question like, how are you going to build the sales team? How are you going to piece together the marketing team? That's still an organization question. So you want to make sure that you're talking in sequences and you're laying out certain pillars that go along with organizing something. What are they? So, for example, maybe you're a college student and I haven't organized anything, right? I do my school assignments. Or I'm a junior, I'm 25 years old, I'm a junior engineer, and I'm constantly organizing it, but I don't really think about it and reverse engineer it in a manner that I'm going to answer a question that way. Well, you always want to start with, I organized this problem, I organized this issue, just like I would organize any issue. The first part of organization is inventorying what needs to be organized, number 1. Second thing is, in order to organize it, you need to assemble or prioritize it. Right, okay, that's conceptually what you would do. In order to prioritize it, you need what? Prioritization criteria. what takes precedent? What's more important? So I figure out what the criteria is. Then based on what I'm going to inventory, based on what the criteria is, then I go into organization mode. I place it where it goes. I sequence it where it goes. I troubleshoot it the way it should be or whatever. And then I actually lay it out, right? I blueprint it and then what? And then I do it. There it is. Organization. That's what you do, those 4 steps, right? I have a playbook, a la yesterday's lesson, for organizing anything, right? So that's ultimately what you want to say. So whatever example it is that you give, if you give them the pillars, you'll be okay. All right, that's number 5. Number 6, negative Nellies. Anything you would not do? Tell me about a weakness. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Anything I wouldn't do with the if they you actually get this question, your automatic response is I would not do anything illegal. Okay, that's the answer to that one. Anything else that's negative, you always want to do it by omission. Well, I wouldn't want to work for a company that didn't do this kind of thing, all right? So every time you get pinned into a corner and they ask you something negative, never make them errors of commission. You want them to be errors of omission. I have yet to do that. This is something it's a weakness because I've yet to get enough experience in implementing this. Get the idea. Omissions first, and I want to carry the omissions concept through a number of these. What would you miss about your current company, job, so on and so forth? What you don't want to do is you don't want to pick anything that they could be missing themselves, meaning your future employer. So you always want to pick the one-of-a-kinds. What's a one-of-a-kind? People. I'm going to miss the people, right? Because my people over there are not going to be working over there. No one takes offense to that, right? I might miss my customers that I've been spending a lot of time servicing. They're really great people. They invite me to the family parties, those kind of things. You want to miss the one-of-a-kinds where you run zero risk that employer has a gap. Because if you're going to miss something that employer cannot satiate, that's really bad. You're going to lose points. Okay, one-of-a-kinds. And then number 8, any regrets. Okay, I did this a while ago, regrets. I love We're the Millers, and I love that joke about, don't you have any regrets? And the guy's got regrets tattooed across his chest, and he's got regrets spelled with an A, and he says not even one letter. So I always think about, when I think about regrets, it's take-backs, do-overs. Is there anything you wish you did not do? Again, the big O, omission. So you do not regret. Actually, this is a life lesson here. You do not regret anything you've done in your life. You're going to regret things you didn't do. I wish I would have. I wish I would have contacted you sooner. That's my regret, right? I wish I would have. Get comfortable with that. So if you have any regrets, you want to make it a regret of omission, something you did not do that you wish you would have done, you wish you would have done sooner, you wish you would have taken a chance, you wish you would have done something you did not do. And now you know you're going to do it, kind of thing. All right, so those are the regrets, number 8. Number 9, the deal breakers. Any reason you would not take this job. Omissions again. I would not take this job if I felt that the company was not obsessed with customer service. I would not take this job if I didn't feel like the team was committed to, right, making this a world-class organization, or getting to be the number one leader in the market, or whatever. It's omissions. Any reason you wouldn't take the job. It's positive for you, right? You turned a negative question into a positive, meaning I'm so customer service focused that if I find out you're not, then I'm not joining. Okay, something like that. You don't want to go down the path of, well, if you lied to me, or, if I get in and all of a sudden you change the job description on me. Stay away from all that stuff. Okay, then you got the failures. Tell me about the biggest mistake you made. Tell me about when something went wrong. Tell me about a time you epically failed. All they're looking for is it's okay to talk about a mistake. They're not looking for, have you never made a mistake? We all make a mistake. I make mistakes every day, literally every day, every day. And so they're just looking for, do you have a good attitude? Do you have a good outlook? And what are you going to look forward to that something new has come out of the mistake? So you want the mistake to be valuable, and there's a lesson in it. So there was this time when, so anytime I'm a fan of failure, right? I know that failure is a sign that I gave it a go. If I made a mistake or something went wrong, then I'm going to learn from it. I think that's great. The only way to actually get better, as cliche as it sounds, you got to get out of your comfort zone. When you do that, or when you try new things, you're going to break stuff. Okay, so when I approach things that way, I always remember life happens for me, not to me. I would rather be aggressive. I would rather take chances. I would rather try new things. And when they don't work out, we look at what went wrong, we fix it, we learn from it, and so on. So all you're doing is you want to make sure you have a great attitude in the way in which you tell this. I do have videos on this one too on the YouTube channel. And then what I called, not Nearly's Sophie choice, but things like, would you rather work for yourself or in a team, or or do you would you prioritize your customer over your teammates, or something like that? Whenever you get into these situations, turn their or question into an and question. First thing I would do is I would look for, is there a way that I can satisfy both? That's my first inclination. I don't believe that I automatically have to give up one or the other. Yes, I understand that there's limited times in the day, but so whenever you're given an or situation, first inclination is I want to turn it into an and, not an or. All right, so when you think about these 11 groupings, you want to make sure that you were thinking of them in those terms. And then from a how to tell the story standpoint, I want to talk about that now. I want to give you a simple tip. I've been hitting this one pretty hard over the past several weeks. When you think about whether it's and I talked earlier about these three types of questions, right? The behavioral, the project specific, and the situational. Regardless, I have formulas for each of those. There's a similar backbone to all three of them that you would use. But one simple way that I want you to consider this is, I drew this little, actually the boot campers saw this yesterday, but I want you to think about your storytelling like a car, okay? And by the way, it did, yes, only take me one take to get the flag done. What's the context, what's the approach, and what's the result that actually happened? And the context up here, a lot of people, when we role play in my one-on-one sessions, their inclination is to just start the story and then just start, first this, then that, then that, then that. But I don't really have an understanding of how important this project was, why you were called, what you were trying to accomplish, what damage would have occurred had you not attained your goal. And so what I want you to do is every single time that you get asked a question, I want you to take just a few seconds to lay the groundwork for why this was so important. That's goal number one. And then goal number two is I want you to foreshadow what the results are that you attained. So what do I mean by that? Let me give you an example. So Andy, I see you are a project manager and you implemented this customer relationship system that took you and your team 8 months to implement. Can you walk me through that project, right? You get questions like that. And a lot of people would say, okay, well, the first thing I did was this. When the first thing that I want you to say is, oh, that's a great question. The reason this was such a critical project is because we were addressing the CRM system because our customer service was so horrible that we were losing customers because they couldn't get through to the call center. And when they got through the call center reps couldn't figure out what information they needed. They couldn't get it quickly. So our hold times were up, our response times were slow, and we weren't able to keep customers on, also to upsell them on other things and services that we offer. We were losing 8 out of 10 customers every 3 months. It was a huge problem. Okay, that's serious, right? Or we were losing $1 million a month, or we were whatever, or attrition rate was 80% when a normal attrition rate should be less than 10%, something like that. So I was called in to implement. Okay, so now what you told them is, this was really important. There was a serious problem. They called you because you're awesome, and you already told them, basically they're going to assume that you put a system in that fixed that. I already know what the results are going to be. Everything, the call times went down, the information was more accessible, and so on. And then what you do is you walk them through your approach. So, like any customer implementation that's IT related, I did the 7 things that you would always do for any project that was of this size. Project was, $1.5 million. We had 20 resources, and the first thing that I did was this, the second this, third this, right? I got with the stakeholders, we made sure we understood what the goals were, we architected it, we designed it, we implemented it, we tested it, we integrated it, and we turned it on, right? Kind of thing. And then you walk them through each step, and then you say, and when we were done, when we turned the system on, we noticed in the first month that the call center times were dropping precipitously. Immediately, they dropped 50% in the first month. And what ultimately happened was, after 6 months, we were able to level off, and our customer turnover rate was back below 10%. The solution was a raging success, and so on. So that's the way you actually tell a story. All right, and you give them a reason why they need to continue to listen to you. You got to capture and keep their attention. It's easier to keep their attention when you draw them a map of what your story looks like. If you just start you ever have a conversation with a friend, your friend starts talking, and then they're just babbling, and you're wondering, why the hell are you telling me this? Or where are you going with this? Or why is this important? Or am I supposed to remember every single detail of everything you're telling me right now? No, but when you get in with an employer and they ask you something, what you do is you told them why it was important. So this is why you want to listen to me, and this is why it mattered. And this here is the map of what I'm about to tell you, not to mention the framework of what I went through. So I come with a playbook, and I let you know what happened as the results or the outcome, what happened as a result of me doing what I did, which is what you want on the resume and what you want in the storytelling. All right, so you can use this little card technique or call it whatever you want, or remember Andy's cool racing flag or whatever. But that's how you need to approach each of the stories that you tell, whether it's behavioral, project specific, or even situationals. Okay, but in situationals, you're going to spend a lot of time in the approach section, right? Because we understand why they asked you, right? There must be some important problem, but and you haven't attained any results because it's a fictitious future situation. Okay. All right. Wait. So now I want to shift. I want to get into a case study now. All right. Wait. If you are loving this, make sure to click the like button. Make sure you subscribed. Okay. I want to switch over. How we doing so far? Everything's quiet. Everything's quiet. It makes me worry a little bit. I usually like a little more noise during my live shows. Okay. Let's get into the PowerPoint. So there was this boot camper. Her name's Olivia. She's pretty awesome. I think all my boot campers are awesome. To be honest with you, they are. I wish y'all could see you the way I see you. It's really special for me. And Olivia came to the boot camp recently. Wanted to get together with me because she was starting to go through the program. She's interviewing, and here's the situation. She's a senior project manager, and this global organization was looking for a senior IT PM. She had already met with an external recruiter who put her in front of the internal recruiter hirer and CIO, I believe. And what happened was she went to this interview. She didn't feel like her stories were sharp. She didn't feel like she scored super well. She also was a bit confused because there was a disconnect between what the interviewer what the executive recruiter told her she was interviewing for, and what the hirer and CIO thought they were interviewing her for. There was a disconnect. It was a hot mess. And then to make matters worse, she wasn't sure which stories to tell, and this was exacerbated by the fact that they were asking her these random questions that weren't completely dialed up, didn't give her enough specifics about where she should take her story, and she wasn't really sure. And she said, and they were asking her kind of random, behavioral questions, and even just some random questions like, well, how would you handle a backlog? A backlog of what, kind of things. And so she and I got together, and I said, okay, send me. So when I do these one-on-one sessions, what I have the folks do is I have them send me their resume. If they're getting help from me for interviewing prep, I have them send me the company, send me the job description, send me any storyboards. If they have sample answers that they've worked on, or notes, or anything that they want, they send me their criteria, what's important to them, and so on. So I looked at what the JD said, and the things that I want you to notice over these next couple of pages are how I look at a JD. You could call this the Andy heat map if you want. So when I look at a JD, I see it differently than other people, right? Some people, they look at the song sheet, all they see are the notes. I hear the music, and I know where to look, and I want you to show you, before we get into the here's how for Olivia, what is it that's important when you look at a JD. So they need a project manager, and they'd like 10 years. It's IT enterprise apps. It's HR primary function with a SaaS. Okay, those are all unique components. Why do I want to know that? Because those are going to be elements she's going to have to address in her storytelling. It's a global, they're looking for somebody who has global experience in high-tech companies. So have you worked for an international organization? Have you implemented international solutions? And have you done that for technology organizations? Okay, right now, all we're doing is what? Hey, we're organizing, right? We're inventorying. What do we got to cover here? Now, when you see things like demonstrable results in delivering modern blah, 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 this is the employer version of word vomit that means nothing. But I noticed they put the word adoption in there, which means it's very important to them that if they're implementing an IT solution, that they want people to use it. I mean, they could have just said user adoption. That's all I would need to know in a JD. Again, demonstrable experience leading. Customization. Okay, so you're going to need to be able to customize the solution, and you're going to need to be able to integrate it. Okay, so far so good. Nothing out of the ordinary. Knowledge of IT compliance. Okay, that's a component I need working knowledge of. Data security, cybersecurity, privacy, and Chinese. They called out Chinese because the headquarters is in China. Now, that's a preferred but not required. But that the organization would love to have that. They cannot require that because what? That's discrimination, right? And then bachelor's degree, which I glossed over. Project managed overseas HCM, human capital management. Okay, so now here's what you're going to be doing. All right. Agile, standardized, agile, waterfall. That's what that's code for. That's what we want you to be able to do. That's the approach we want you to take. SaaS adoption, right? I get it. Global rollout, fine. Same thing, right? It's international across different regions within the world. Analytics and metrics. So I need to know that you come with strong monitoring ability to make sure that the project is on time, on budget. You know what earned versus burned is. You know how to track it, adjust, and so on. So you have to have dashboarding skills. You have to know what to look for and how to make adjustments. All right, great. And continuous improvement. All right, so once you get it up and running, you need to be able to monitor it, right? Okay, so now let's strip it all out. What does it look like? Give me 10. Give me 10 as a PM. HR, HCM functions, cool. High-tech companies, have you worked for? Have you been global? Do you understand new implementations of HCM solutions from scratch? This is what they were doing. All right, so they were implementing a solution from nothing. Ground floor stuff. SaaS adoption, adoption's code for change management. What are the methods you've used? Continuous improvement, have you done maintenance? Okay, well, she had 9 years of total work experience. Total. Not all of that was PMing, but let's be generous and give her 7. All right, so I'm a little light. I understand human capital management because I do that at my current technology company, but I've not implemented it. I just maintain the system. Okay, so that's not great, but it's not terrible because you got working knowledge of the functions. High-tech companies, I would call them close enough. Global, not hugely large, but she is Asian. And she understands the culture. And I wasn't even sure, she might even probably speak the language. She has done new implementations, but not HCM like they wanted. There were some other things that were loosely connected. SaaS adoption, so she understands how to help implement it and get it, ingrained with the user base, but not on a large scale. Her methodology was very, very good, and she had continuous improvement because she currently was maintaining her company's HCM system, so that like little maintenance, bugs, little fixes, and those kind of things. So we had some gaps here. Now, there were years of experience gap, there was the size of a project gap, there was the impact level. Now, I want y'all to stare at that for a second. I said to her, this job should be a layup for you. Because on paper, I would take that list all day long. Because she's got the elements of what I need. Now it comes down to what? Storytelling. Right? Paperwork is there. That's why she's sitting in front of them. That's why even though she didn't do well, they invited her back for another round. Right? So when you look at, Andy, am I close enough? Should I submit? Hey, Andy, I thought I was right there, but I didn't get the job. Your storytelling fell apart. If anybody has this background against that job description, the way she has it, that job should be yours. You should be counting the new payday, right? Except that let's not be flip about it, right? You got to go through the interviews and you got to score well. You got to connect with them. You got to make sure that your stories are in alignment with their problems, right? So we still got some work here to do, even though I think Olivia is a star. All right, so she said, Andy, I want you to help me address the gaps. I need some help with the storytelling. I'd like to tighten my responses because I want to make sure I stay on track. I don't want to fall prey to wandering into areas that are not really important. Maybe we can touch on the tell me about yourself. They asked me these random questions. I'm not sure, how to siphon it down to know exactly what they're looking for and how do I handle these vague questions. All right, so I said, okay, this is how I want you to think about it, and this is where the ROI comes in. This is where I earn my money. You've got to determine what the most important skills are, what is actually truly required. So we went back. Now, I would say in this case that you need large-scale project management experience for IT solutions. If you have some knowledge of human capital solutions, that's good too. Global is important, especially because for somebody who's working in the US, when you start working globally, whether in Asia or anywhere, doesn't make any difference. The cultures are different. You need to understand what those cultural differences are because that is going to permeate through the way in which you run the project, the way in which you interact with them, and all that good stuff. And every country's got different standards. It's important that you have that. So, in my opinion, she had all that. She did. She really did. She had to get her primary story in order. So, when I say primary story, if you are a marketer and you're going to digital marketing, you're going to go in and you're going to interview. If you are a project manager and you go in and you're going to interview. If you're a technologist and you're going to go in and interview, you can run an entire interview on one story. You need one bread and butter story that is analogous to what it is they do. Now you might say, well, Andy, hang on, I haven't done exactly what I'm going over there to do. Number one, that's the point. I want to learn. Yeah, it is. But you got to sell yourself into there first. And with your one story, they're going to notice that what you're telling them is just like what they need you to do. That's the big deal part. Except that she didn't have a super clean story. because she didn't have anything that looked exactly like what they were looking for. And then the offshoots are sub-stories. So we have to get them in order, and it's a lot less for you to remember. And then how do you harden up the soft questions? And if you have to harden up the soft questions, like when they say things to me like, well, how would you handle the backlog? You need to say, okay, I would handle the backlog based on what's in the backlog. So in the backlog could be, right, new enhancements, version 2, right, bug fixes, wish list stuff, and so on. And so here's how I would do that. Are you talking about, if you want to talk about a backlog, then we're going to talk maintenance. If you want to talk about future enhancements, we're going to talk about new rollouts. So basically she's going to harden it up so she knows where to go with the response, and she knows all the variations of what it could be, and you have to anticipate that because anybody who was experienced enough would know that. And so you immediately go back and you harden it up for them. So these are the things that we needed to work on with her. And then here's what she had. I said, now when I get into one-on-one interviews, one-on-one coaching sessions with people, I look at their job descriptions. This is for interview prep when I prep somebody. And I look at so I had an advanced look at what she sent me. I looked at it and I knew exactly what she needed. I didn't know what she had other than the resume I was looking at. So when she and I got together, I said to her, okay, what do you have related to human capital management, large project implementations, global, SaaS, right? I ticked it off for her. What's the story? She said, well, I maintain the HCM system now. Okay, that's not close enough. You maintain it, that's fine. That checks off the knowledge of the functions. She says, well, I implemented this I implemented this reference checking system that we needed to put in place because we had no way to handle reference checking, manage reference checking, and all that good stuff. And I said, okay, how long was it? She says, 2 months. I said, okay, that's not long enough. What else do you have? She said, well, I did this almost year long, I think it was, security project where we had some issues with hundreds of users that were using the a system, and this was a security-based approach. I think we needed to make sure we were HIPAA compliant, who had access to what, and it was a fairly complicated solution. It's how long did it take? How many resources were there? So, okay, now, when I'm working with you, I can say to you, okay, what do you got? And if that doesn't fit, I can start piecing together and asking you, okay, what else? She says, well, I got one of these. I said, give me that, right? Because we're going to take all this together and we're going to build you a story where you could run the whole interview and you can score all the points you need to off one story and the additional offshoots that you need to include in the storytelling to make it sound like one response. That's your goal. I only need one response. Okay, so here's what I want to share with you. Now, why just one response? Well, it doesn't matter what their question is, right? How have you done this before? Do you have these skills? What makes you unique? Tell me about a similar project. These are all the same question. Tell me about that project there or this project there. Have you implemented an HCM solution before from scratch? No, she hadn't, right? Have you implemented full life cycle? All of these questions are all the same question in the interview. They all have the same response, which is why she doesn't need to package 7 different responses. She needed one response that she knew how to tell really well. Okay? And so this is what I want to teach you guys. I'm constantly looking for new ways to illustrate how to tell stories. Do I have any book writers out there, novelists in particular, or short story writers? Raise your hand if I do. There's different ways to tell a story. The novelists will know these. I'm an author and I obsess over writing, so these are pretty apparent to me. And when you are telling a story, it's all about the narrative that you're telling. And there's different ways to tell a narrative to elicit different reactions, emotions, actions, and whatever your goal is for whoever's reading it or hearing it from you. There's linear storytelling. Now, linear storytelling is just like it sounds. It starts in the beginning, it goes to the next step, the next step, the next step, and everything, and all the way from A to Z, and it all happens in time sequence. is perfectly linear. Okay, so starts and it finishes. All right, that's it. Now, some of you can tell stories that way, right? I did this project, I started here, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, boom, linear. Okay, that's what a lot of you do. And you're afraid to go off track because you don't want to go all over the place. Except that the best way to tell a story is to fracture it. Now, nonlinear storytelling or nonlinear writing, you've probably seen it, watched it in movies, read it in novels, but a nonlinear story is a story that jumps time or has insertions from other places or has flashbacks, which are different, but other ways where you're using information to illustrate your point. So you've seen a movie, right, where you see the movie going and then what happens? Oh, 17 years earlier, they're flashing back to what was happening to the character or in the story or whatever it is. Sometimes it jumps forward, sometimes it jumps back, sometimes it jumps out. Okay, that's fracturing a story because you need something that happened at a different moment in time to make a point. Or in this case, if it's entertainment, they're just trying to get better emotion out of you. So that's called fracturing. Then there's other things where you can frame a story. This is different than the priming and framing I teach you from moving a person's emotional state and getting them to view something how you want them to view it. Framing a story from a narrative standpoint is a story within a story. So all this stuff is going on, and the story is I'm sitting around and I'm talking with my buddies, and then the story within the story is I'm telling them a story about something else, kind of thing. So there's a story within a story, or there's another thing that I would call, and I didn't have a proper name for this, but it's really like a curation. So like you Frankenstein it. So you take different pieces of different stories and you curate them together to make it sound like one story. Do you know that I do this to you almost every talk? Right? What did I do yesterday? I gave you 6 criterion points in a row. What did I do? I pulled 3 different stories from 3 different people that happened 3 different moments in time. And so I curated what I need to illustrate the point I was making in the talk, which I was giving to you in a linear fashion, except from a time perspective, I had to go back in time and grab examples to illustrate the point I needed to make to you right at that moment. Okay, so these are different ways for you to assemble your interview stories. Okay, so now what I want to basically give you an example of what I mean, so you have an understanding of what Olivia was doing. So she said to me, or she asked, should I, which story should I use? And now, remember yesterday when I said, well, relevancy is better than recency, except she had some relevancy that she was maintaining a system with HCM. She also had a recent story where she did that 8-week implementation, except complexity trumps both of these if you can check off most of the skill sets that the employer needs. So complexity in her story about the security and the user permissions and the user base to get them dialed in is going to trump everything. And so I had to teach her how to fracture that story to get all the elements that she needed to show them that she had all the requirements that they needed. They just didn't all fit nicely into one project. So what we did was I said to her, all right, I want you to go with the more complicated project that was bigger. It was global, so that's good. It is somewhat related because there were some security issues, some HIPAA issues, some other things that you were overcoming. Okay, so context, approach, we're going to fracture the approach, and then we're going to tell them about what happened. So context, you don't just start with, I have this story, it's about security, right? You start with what? There was this problem. We were out of compliance with HIPAA laws. We had all of these users. We didn't have the proper security settings. We didn't have the proper user roles. We had people with access to places. We were violating these laws. We had all kinds of right. Okay, that's the context. There's a real problem here. Okay, so this needs to be implemented. So I was put in charge. Now, when I was put in charge, a significant portion of this project was thinking about what the roles were going to be, how to assemble it. We had to match it with the laws and all this other stuff. Great. Except that that's not exactly what you're going to do when you implement this HCM, this more of an operational system. So that's okay. So you give them the context, you tell them what you did, you give them the whole year and all the stages. So she did that. Then when you go into the body, when you get into the approach, here and you take them through the steps, you go linear, you say, I did this first, then I did this second. And when I got to the second piece, there was this requirements phase that we had to go through. Now you're going to give them the detail, and then you're going to fracture the story, and you're going to tell them how they would have to do this in their environment for exactly what they need to do and why you know that to be the case. So here's what I did. But this is analogous to, take them to the future, in your environment, when you implement an HCM system, the requirements gathering is going to be a little different because, and I know that because, jump back in time, because when I'm working in a maintenance mode and we do these mini cycles, this is the way we have to do it, and this is the most effective way. So that's what we would do in the future. That's how you fracture a story. Okay, and then you keep going. So just so you understand, that's what you would have to look forward to if I was to run this project. I took them into the future, I brought them back to the present in the story. And then she went on, finishes it out. So when we test it, most of this is going to be tested this way, except that when we test your system, there's going to need to be more elegant script writing. We're going to need to use a tool. We're going to, boom. Why do you know that? Because every time we do something this complicated where there's a lot of customization to the system, we have to do it this way. That wasn't part of her story. She's telling them that's what they're going to have to do. Well, all of a sudden, this sounds like somebody who has a methodology and is pulling all the pieces. You know, there was this time where I encountered this problem. I didn't encounter this. You'll encounter this problem. I didn't encounter this problem. But back in 1999, this happened. Kind of thing. So that's fracturing the story to make it sound like one story. You are not running off at the mouth because you're doing it very quickly. You're just inserting points for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're giving them a better illustration of what their life is likely to be like when they take the project on. You're giving them assurances that you know what to anticipate and how you would handle it. You're validating it with where in your life I Frankensteined it. I just pulled a piece, I pulled the arm over from that and I attached it right there and I built it, and it all sounds cohesive because what's the goal of your story? To show them that you know what you're doing and the value you're going to contribute and why you're qualified to do it. Right? So that's how she had to piece it together. Who's tracking with me? I know this sounds complicated, but when you think about it, there's steps to this, right? What is it that they want? What is it that I have? What's my most analogous story? How do I fill in the gaps inside the story I want to tell them or am likely to tell them? And how do I build it and make it one? And that's how you do that. And you think about it, and it's just 3 steps. And most of where you would fracture the story is in the approach. Well, I did this first, I did this second, I did this third. And then just take what you need and drop it into where it is because you need to push them into their environment, right? So you're not using the whole stop after the story's done and then do you have an exam? No, she knows what their problem is. She knows why they're interviewing her. She knows the system that she's going to need to implement. Well, we got that straight, right? She knows the system that they're going to need to implement. So I hope that helps you understand. So when you're looking at this linear, so like interview intervention, that's linear except what? When I fracture it, when I tell you stories. When I do things like there was this guy, his name was Michael, boom, 2007. There was this guy, his name was Andy, and in 2003, if somebody would have told him he's going to be a recruiter in 2004, he would have laughed you out of the room, right? Kind of thing. That's a fracture. Now, it's way better if you're telling entertaining stories, but you can use those techniques. I'm telling you, it's okay to pull things in from other stories when they are contextually important. And you need them to sell yourself, and you're doing this for illustrative purposes. The goal for you is not to tell a story from A to Z. The goal for you is to get a job. The fastest way to do that is to make sure that they can see you have all the skills that you need. Okay? So, who's tracking with me? Linear, nonlinear, fractured, Frankenstein. If you hear any other career coach talking like this, you know they copied it from me. I have to keep making names and stuff up so that I can make sure that I'm out in front of everybody and that you guys are getting it first and best. Okay, If you, okay, I promised myself I was getting this done within an hour. It's 11:58, so I'm just stopping right now. You're done on this, okay? So you got the goods here. If you enjoyed that, click the thumbs up.